What is going on, YouTube? So I wanted to come back today with the next part in my NBA Draft Big Board series for the 2020 draft, coming up here a little less than a month on November 18th. I've gotten through my top 5 point guards and then top 5 shooting guards so far. So I want to do my top 5 wings, top 5 small forwards in this class. One of the more interesting positions because a good portion, I think, of like the late first, early second round picks among the forwards in this class are going to be from the international pool. So let's go ahead and get started here. I want to do my honorable mentions first because there's a few that's I don't know if they're really going to climb up the draft board at all, but could kind of sneak their way as late first round picks. And just were pretty established players in college. First one being Jordan Warra. Looked like he could be a lottery pick coming into, I believe it was his junior season at Louisville. He was really impressive statistically, but he showed a lot of flaws in his game just in terms of how he would translate to the NBA. A lot of questions on the defensive end of the floor. Shot selection was spotty at times, turns the ball over a lot. Granted, despite the inconsistent shot selection, he was pretty efficient just in terms of his shooting percentages. He's a good scorer. He's very good in transition. He's got the physical tools and the length to be a good defender, so maybe that's something that can translate, but he is one of the older small forward prospects in this class, so that potential might come into question. Next one, Robert Woodard, the small forward out of Mississippi State. A little bit different situation than Warra. When you're looking at Robert Woodard, it's one of those situations, I think, where if you have the depth already at the small forward position, then it could be a really intriguing fit. Because he's a pretty niche player, but he does still have, I still think he has room to grow. He's a very strong, versatile defender, about 6'7", 6'8", 230. And he's a good three-point shooter. He is going to be one of the more potent 3-and-D wings in this class. I think he can play anywhere between kind of the 2 and the 4, depending on how small you want to get in your lineup. And just, I think he could be a good fit for, like I said, some really niche teams. Saddiq Bey, the last one I have among the honorable mentions, the wing coming out of Villanova, showed a lot of potential. Again, improved his game pretty dramatically during, I believe it was his sophomore campaign, but he has the chance to fall. If there's a team that absolutely falls in love with him, to fall kind of around like the mid-teens to the early 20s, or like mid to late teens, and then all the way down to the early 20s. Again, good versatile offensive talent. He's still got a ways to go in his game, just in terms of IQ as a defender. The physical tools are there, but he's not the greatest athlete in this class. I wouldn't really put him into that mold of a 3-and-D wing. But again, a solid shooter, mainly lives inside the 2-point line, but that's a name to watch as well. So with that, let's go ahead and move into the top 5. At number 5, we have one of my favorite prospects in this class, Erin Nee Smith. He's going to be a similar mold, I think, to Robert Woodard if he can round out his defensive game. I think that's going to be the biggest question outside of his outside of the injury. I believe he had a lower body injury that kept him to like a dozen games played last season. He's a really good athlete, though. Impressive wingspan, around 7'1". He's a very, very good shooter. I think he's one of the best wing shooters you're going to find in this class. Again, the questions are just going to be the consistency and the health, because he really didn't get to play all that much at Vanderbilt. So you kind of have a Darius Garland situation like that emerging again this year. Number 4, I've got Tyler Bey. He can play at the 2 or the 3. I don't know if he's really ever going to fit in at the 4, but he is coming out of the Colorado basketball program, a former Buff. I really like Tyler Bey, but again, there's going to probably be some questions out there for his game. He was one of the more impressive 2 or 3 wing or shooting guard in this class statistically, averaged a little north of 17 points per game, about 11 or 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 blocks, and 2 steals. Again, a good shooter, good length, good athlete, about 6'7", 215. Tyler Bey, it's all going to depend on how a team feels he fits with their system, because like I said, I don't know how high the ceiling is for him. He is one of the older prospects in this class. I've mentioned this a bunch, but I do cover the Bulls, and I think that with a prospect like Tyler Bey, Saddiq Bey, you have to watch out for kind of the Chandler Hutchison situation, where if you just get a wing that's a poor fit with the system, and the flaws are just exposed right away. They have a spotty injury history, whatever that be. That can be a clog in the rotation for the first 2 or 3 years out of college. So move it to number 3. I've got Patrick Williams, part of the 2 top prospects out of the Florida State basketball program. Pat Williams can probably play at the 3 or the 4. Him and Devin Vassell would split time a little bit on the wing, but I believe most of the minutes for Patrick Williams came at the 4 while he was at FSU. He's going to be a really impressive player, I think, in the NBA. Patrick Williams is a really good defender. He's got really gifted physical tools, about 6'8", 6'9". He's got to work on his outside shooting. He's not the most developed playmaker either yet, but that's something that could come along. I believe he was just a freshman at Florida State, one of the younger forward prospects in this class. But again, given that I think he was improving his shooting heading into ACC play, especially from deep and shooting at a heavier volume, and he's good within the 2-point arc and from the free throw line. I think he's a player that can fit in the wing in the NBA. Probably fall late lottery, mid-teens. Number 2, and this is where you started to get into the firm lottery picks among the small forwards in this class. Isaac Okoro, freshman small forward out of Auburn. Again, not a huge fan of this term, but it does seem that he has one of the higher floors in this class just because his game was very defined at Auburn. He's a very, very good on-ball defender. He's smart enough, high enough defensive IQ, and good enough in transition, again, gifted enough athlete to the point where he's really good off-ball too. He's going to be a defensive force in the NBA. He'll be one of the better perimeter defenders in this class, or wing defenders. He's got the length about he's about 6'6", 6'7", with about a 7-foot wingspan. Very vertically gifted, and I think you're looking at a player that's probably going to fall like around I'd say the 7 to 10 mark. Might fall around to the 12 or 14 range if he really goes far, but I think that'd be a steal if any team got him around then. Player that averaged around 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2-3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. Now in offense, the defined game comes from, again, he kind of lives within the 2-point arc. He shot I think it was below 30% from 3, but above 50% from the field. So he does like working down low. We'll see if he's able to expand his game. But the shooting fundamentals, from what I understand, they're not really the strongest. That part of his game is going to take time. The good news is, again, he was just a freshman. I believe he's 19 years old. So he's got a good ways to go there. There's a lot of pluses. Again, I think he's a quote unquote safer pick. That part of his game does check out. And then number 1, I think the clear-cut number 1 small forward prospect in this class, and he can fit at different positions because he's going to be really versatile, I think, in the NBA. But that's Denny Avdia. He's about 6'7", 6'8", or 6'8", small forward, shooting guard, wing, coming from Maccabi Tel Aviv, playing overseas. Again, one of the younger prospects in this class among the forwards, about 19 years old. I believe he will be 19 at the start of the 2021 season in all likelihood. There's a lot of potential surrounding what his offensive arsenal can do in the NBA. He's a really good playmaker, good distributor, very good shot creator, given that he's not the most physically gifted athlete in this class. He's not a bad athlete by any means. I would say he's like a 6 out of 10 in that regard if you wanted to put like a scale on it. He shot around 32% from 3 with Maccabi Tel Aviv in EuroLeague last year. So the shooting inconsistencies are there because I believe when he was playing overseas in a tournament earlier this year, he was shooting he was on pace for like the whole 50, 40, 90 stat line. And he's shown a lot of maturity in his game the last 2 or 3 years. Weird roles with Maccabi Tel Aviv, just in the sense that his minutes have been very sparse at times. But again, he's playing in a really good league at a really young age. So the comps are going to come out between Avdia and Luka Doncic. Again, I'm not the biggest. I don't really know off the top of my head who Avdia would compare to among the younger players in the NBA right now. He's got a very different profile. Got enough length. I think he's good enough and smart enough on ball and off ball to contend on defense. I think out of the gates, you're looking at maybe a best case situation in net neutral, and he can develop over time, presence on the defensive end of the floor. And then while, again, he's a good shot creator and a good playmaker with Maccabi Tel Aviv, I think, again, kind of given that ceiling on his physical tools and just lateral quickness, he might have some trouble creating his own offense out of the gates, but we'll see how that goes. It's been a while since I've seen consistent film of Avdia. So realistically, I think you're looking at him as a top 5 pick. I've seen a lot to the Hornets number 3, the Bulls at number 4, but realistically, given his versatility and just a lot of the promise surrounding his game, I think you can look for Avdija to go anywhere anywhere in the top 6, outside of maybe the top 2. And so that pretty much does it for my top 5 small forwards in this class. I will try to come back later this week with my top 5 power forwards and then round it out with the centers. I'm going to do a complete ranking, go through big board, and then try to go back through one more mock before the actual NBA draft comes around next month. So that's pretty much it. See ya.